Welcome to RaceGuru Thunder Hour, Episode 2. We're back. Welcome. I'm your host, Rich Maletto. You can find me on X at Fantasy Bosco with my co-host here, Sean Engel, who you can find at Sean E247 on the Xbox machine. We're here to talk NASCAR once again after last week's incredible finish at Atlanta. I mean, we'll get into Atlanta and some of our thoughts all the way around, but there is no doubt that will go down as an instant classic simply because of the finish of that race. And hey, if you listened to last week's show, we tipped you off at that time a 35-1 bet who ended up becoming a 45-1 bet. How Vegas got dumber on the line, I don't know. Apparently, they don't watch this show because they would have realized that, yeah, we told them it was bad line, horrible line. And Daniel Suarez went on to win. Hey, shout out to G-Bro. I'm trying to think who else had a screenshot. Some hits. Key will have some shots. Man, I feel bad. I just remember G-Bros because it was like a $5 bet that paid $230. And I was like, hot damn, he paid for his membership and then some on a nice little bet there.
Whew. It was quite something. I noticed in the Fantasy Guru Discord, which, by the way, you should be there if you want to hear more awesome bets like that one other than us on the show. We saw so many screenshots there, and just even over the course of the race, it just evolved in odds and got more favorable as the race circumstances go on. But it just goes to show, you want to be there, you want to listen to us, you want to see our live bets, get in there, ask questions, do all the works. We got you covered.
We do have you covered. And the best way to tune in, watch, get all the information is our Game Time MVP package you can find at fantasyguru.com. With it, you get all the sports minus football. Football's separate. Everybody knows football's its own animal. It's not much we can do about that. There's no March Madness. Again, it's its own animal. I don't know what to tell you guys. And look, between Rob and Joe and Ray for the fantasy baseball stuff, like it's also its own animal. But you get horse racing, MMA, PGA, hockey, NBA, and keep in mind, it is an annual package, 12 months, 365 days. So yes, there's only half a season of hockey and NBA, but you get next year's first half of the season too included. So please check it out. The insane price of $74.99. Look, if you hung out with us, you've already won that money back. Just saying. Yeah, I mean, we're not trying to break arms, patting ourselves on the back, but we did. I mean, heck, Tyler turned free crowns into $26. So look, we know what we're doing. We know what we're talking about. We're excited to talk about NASCAR. Sean and I have been watching this sport probably since we've barely been able to walk, honestly. So we do know what we're talking about here. Speaking of watching racing, what was your thoughts overall with the Atlanta race? Like, not so much the finish, because I worry a little bit that maybe we have some revisionist history come to mind when we come back here in the fall, that because of that finish, look, there's no getting around. It was fantastic. But what was your thoughts on the race overall?
I also thought out of the three races that occurred this past weekend at Atlanta, the Cup race, in my opinion, was by far the best one. Oh, not even any question about it. There was a lot of action. There was a lot of passing. The storylines kept evolving through each and every stage. That was just true racing right there. And this next-gen car, they just nailed the package with Atlanta. And the finish, that's the big giant cherry on top. The third closest finish in Cup Series history right there. Absolutely crazy. And 3 wide at the line. That's like Talladega all the way back in like 2011, 2012, back when tandem drafting was a thing.
Which I was at that race. One of the other, I told you, Sean, I've been fortunate to be a part of seeing some really interesting and crazy games. Some, they all seem to have some sort of weird history or record. I was one of those races I was at. And from our seats, you could not tell who won. Like, I can only imagine what it was like in Atlanta. Because there is you have to be right in line with the flag stand at that moment in time and see it. And then it happens so fast, you still don't know. But, I can only imagine what it was like. I'll be honest. I thought the racing was fine. I know I'm kind of poo-poo all the time on the drafting stuff. It was fine. It was a solid, good race. There's no denying the truck was a shit show. Those trucks were a handful. You could see that. Now, whether that's they're bigger, taller, lower, or higher center of gravity, I don't know. You also have a lot of more inexperienced drivers compared to the Cup Series, right? So I don't want to poo-poo on the truck guys overall, but it was a bit of a dumpster fire. Lots of cautions, just kind of drug out. Definitely not one of the better races of the year. And hey, in the truck's defense, we go to 3 pack races a year in the truck series. We already did 2 of them. We will only see this kind of, I'm assuming, action like we saw this weekend later in the year when we go to Talladega later this summer, fall. So, and I'm with you, Sean. Xfinity was solid, right? It was nothing too crazy.
Me personally, I don't know about that one, Rich. It was a race. In my opinion, I thought, even though Dominance Fest are kind of impressive in their own right, I thought that was an impressive performance by Jesse Love to lead all those laps, but then just choke it away at the end due to fuel there. But it also, there was not a lot of passing in the Xfinity race. It was kind of just like, the cars were just riding around each other, going around the track. The trucks had a little bit more action to compensate.
True.
But overall, though, it's still, it was a little bit of a mess there at the trucks, too. Let's not kid ourselves.
It was a mess. And, maybe I think what I found interesting with the Xfinity race was the whole fuel mileage thing, because before we got that late caution, it really was going to be interesting to see how it played out, right? So, I mean, the last 20, 30 laps of that race, again, old school racing mentality. I miss having some of these fuel mileage things come into play like we used to, or tire management. I really miss some of that stuff. So I appreciated that. I appreciated Austin Hill. Winners. I posted this on Twitter's winners win. That's what he does. I mean, he never gets talked about as far as talent, like we talked about Jesse Love and some of these other guys. But the guy always is near the top and consistently top 10, top 15. Like, I just feel like he's a little underappreciated. He definitely has some serious prowess at this drafting, though. I mean, he just knows where to put himself at the right times. He really does. But I enjoyed seeing it. It is sad to see that it came down to Jesse just straight up running out of fuel, because he did. He dominated that in the entire event. So my honest fear, Sean, I fear that we're going to see NASCAR want to convert more 1.5 mile tracks to this style of racing, specifically for the Cup Series.
Oh, yeah, I totally think that they're going to do that. In my opinion, I thought the idea of this was interesting to try. I just wish they didn't try it at Atlanta, of all places. They should have tried it at Texas if they were going to try it anywhere.
Yeah, that's true, because Atlanta was, of all, and you heard it from the drivers. Old Atlanta, they would gripe, but they all love to run here, right? This Atlanta, it's interesting, and we'll maybe touch on it, or I can bring it up now. Did you hear Todd Gilliland's radio conversation during the race?
There were a couple of radio conversations. Please tell me which one you're referring to.
So he was talking about, I believe it was Todd Gilliland. He loves, I'm going to paraphrase because I'm going to get the quote wrong here, but to the effect of, has a lot of fun or loves racing there, but every lap he's fearful for his life, type of thing.
That's interesting, especially because, it's easy to cause a massive pileup there now, considering the type of racing that it is. So, yeah, I mean, Atlanta, even though in some ways they made it work with the next gen car, they make it work with this package, but in a sense, the old Atlanta track was still great. I just wish they tried it elsewhere with this experiment, and it's clear the experiment works with this car. I just wish we didn't have to sacrifice a good track for it.
Like Atlanta. I'm with you, man. I am.
Indeed. So.
Sorry, I'm trying to find the exact quote, Sean. Because I found it it was so fitting. It was a lot like the Joey Logano quote of, it was fun until it sucked.
Yeah, he said that at Daytona there, Logano.
Yeah, Daytona, that's right. Gilliland stated, it's like going to a haunted house. It's like fun, but I'm also scared for my life at the same time.
That's a pretty good analogy right there. I like it.
Right? Like I said, I needed to find the right quote, because when I heard it, I was like, oh, that's so perfect, right? I'm with you. Texas gets all the jokes, and they've tried all sorts of things, and they've almost made it worse. Not almost, they have, right? I don't see them doing that to Charlotte just because of the historical references for Charlotte. And Charlotte puts on, look, I went to Charlotte races consistently over and over. I lived down there. Honestly, it's for a diehard fan that can really get into old school racing, right? Things get spread out. It's long, especially the Coke 600, all those things that go into it. It's not necessarily one that's known for, when you look at classical races and performances, that's not a track for as long as it's been on the circuit, as many crown jewel events as it's hosted, it's just not up there. You don't see that. But Atlanta was always so fun. I'm with you. I think we're going to see more of it. I don't know how I feel about that quite yet, to be honest with you, but it was a fine show this week. Like you said, Cup's definitely had it best. And it's weird to me because historically speaking, I've enjoyed the trucks and Xfinity races much more. And I wonder if that's how it's going to be this weekend at Vegas. Because this weekend at Vegas, we really kind of get back to the nitty-gritty of things. So, and we'll be touching on that shortly here. But I am kind of curious to see between the three series. I kind of expect the trucks to stink it up a little bit on these drafting tracks. They're young and experienced drivers. It's kind of like ARCA. I really don't know why ARCA goes to Daytona.
Yeah, it's quite something considering how small the ARCA field is. I mean, it's only almost half the truck series size at this point. So,
yeah, I think they get a few more for Daytona, but I mean, what are we talking? 22 cars on a good day, typically, for an ARCA event.
Yeah, that's about as much as like the Clash used to get back when they used to hold it at Daytona, pretty much.
Right. Well, before we get into the next week, why don't we touch on the penalties, and more penalties, since here we are through week 2 of NASCAR and the penalties are racking up. So why don't you go through them for us here, Sean?
So there were mainly 3 penalties that NASCAR was able to catch as far as the Cup Series is concerned. There were a few other penalties, I believe, within Xfinity and trucks, but really the big ones are at Cup here with the Stewart-Haas racing teams, the number 10 and number 41. They both got docked 35 owner and driver points each for roof air deflectors, while Joey Logano, he got a separate personal penalty and where he was fined $10,000 just because of a safety violation with using gloves that weren't approved by NASCAR. So overall, the air deflectors, that was just because there was, I believe there was a modification of the actual parts at play. Whereas the Logano thing, that was a full-on safety issue where the gloves, and you know how NASCAR takes safety very, very seriously to a point. To a point, just to make it clear. But they were talking about.
I would say I wanted to touch on Joey's penalty because I'm a little irked about it. So it's a safety violation because it's not technically approved. It's approved safety wear, and that particular style glove was not technically approved. To your point, they take safety seriously. I take some issue with, I would argue, if it's a safety thing, wouldn't that be a top tier type violation, especially if you took safety seriously? The other part I want to touch on is I have a feeling the glove was safe as far as Joey's hand was not going to catch on fire. I'm sure it was made of the same materials, the same construction. The difference was the webbing and the size and all that between the hands, right? He used it for a competitive advantage. And I have a problem that they aren't penalizing that as well. I have a problem. There's no points penalties for safety, and they aren't even being honest with the fact there was a competitive advantage. At least, at the very least, a tried competitive advantage. We know they put the hands up in the window at Daytona, so he was trying to get away with something there. And I'm really disappointed. $10,000 for a personal fine. I get that seems a lot, but let's be honest. To Joey, that's going to be chump change. I'm not trying to downplay $10,000. But he's one of the better paid drivers on the circuit, deservingly so. I'm not trying to knock that. But 10,000, big deal. It was, well, if I'm Joey, look, we're gamblers here on this show, Sean. If I have Joey's bankroll, and I think that's the difference in, think about this. Last lap at Daytona, I do this with my hand, and it gives me that 1 millionth better speed. And that's the difference in me winning the Daytona 500. So I'm disappointed in NASCAR in this. I'll be honest, Sean.
Well, the main thing as far as what I've read, though, is just because the material that the gloves were made of was more open material that is easier for it to catch on fire. And that's the part that they were mainly docking him on. Just because when they showed the footage of that, they showed the in-car camera footage of Logano's gloves during qualifying. And that's where in particular they caught this penalty from.
Right.
It wasn't as much during the race. And that also was the reason why Logano was supposed to do the pass-through penalty during the Cup race on Sunday. But it was all just because the company that makes all the gloves for all the drivers, they basically went ahead and evaluated those gloves and said, oh yeah, these gloves are not approved. And they just, the amount of fire that they could absorb just wasn't at a safe level compared to all the other driver gloves. And that's where they were docking him from in particular.
Well, and that's fair. But like I said, whether he got to use in the Daytona 500 or not, he intentionally used it for a competitive advantage. So, sure, safety, again, safety, why is there not a points penalty with it? I would argue if you're doing things that are jeopardizing safety, that's the worst infraction you could make. Can you imagine how drivers would feel if they found out that secretly crew chiefs were thinning out the firewalls and now the drivers were more exposed to crushing, fire, whatever it would be? We would be calling for heads, okay? And I'm not saying we shouldn't be, rightfully so. So if this is truly a safety thing, and I take everything you say that it's worth what it is, right? It potentially more air going through, not pad, not the same construction. Okay, fair enough. Why is there not a points penalty? And why are you not being honest about the competitive advantage they were intentionally trying to get? That whether you got to use in the race or not, that was the goal, I think. He says he wasn't going to. Okay, so it was a competitive advantage for qualifying. He got on the pole at Daytona, right? Or first row, right? So like I said, safety fair. I am very disappointed with how NASCAR handled this overall. I really am.
I'm going to guess that they probably went with just the fine penalty, only just because there was a past precedent set from a few years back when Ryan Newman also did a sort of, not exactly same penalty because it didn't have to do with the gloves, but I believe Newman did something where he didn't wear something that was according to the NASCAR safety standards and also got fined for it a few years ago too. So
head sock, wasn't it?
I believe that was the case, and they also just only gave him a fine back then too. So I'm guessing they're trying to follow the same sort of protocol because that set the precedent of it. That's my guess.
But they're still ignoring the competitive or intentional competitive advantage. That, you know what I mean? Like, that's still a piece of the puzzle that, and again, maybe the penalty needs to be reviewed, because I tell you what, and here again, driver safety and a driver choosing to put its own safety in harm's way is far different than a team choosing to do that for the driver. Okay. So fair enough, but it just bothers me. I would think it's appropriate. Any safety infraction, even 10 points, doesn't have to be a L5 or whatever they call the highest level. Right. But something. And again, the whole design of it was to gain an advantage. And I feel like that's completely lost in all of the discussion, really.
Well, ultimately, maybe NASCAR, especially if there's enough attention on the penalty, they might go back and review the guidelines for it later, especially if penalties like this keep cropping up. But so far, it hasn't cropped up that much for them to really take notice and maybe evaluate it on that further level, because we know this about NASCAR. Back in a few years ago, when they were first incurring penalties about the next-gen car, they were making them more harsh just because of how often the infractions were happening. But then once the race teams got more wise to it and stopped causing those infractions, they lightened up a little. So I think the frequency of these sorts of penalties and how often they occur between all the different drivers and teams, I think will also play a role in as far as if NASCAR wants to go back and make these penalties harsher, just to kind of set a new example or set a new standard for it.
I don't disagree. And especially if we see the same team making multiple types of things, I think you're going to see them swing a very, very big hammer at some point. Their hands are cuffed a little bit because we have the standards with the L1 through L5. You know, how many points once you're in this tier, what constitutes you falling in this tier, which I appreciate. You know, we know in the NFL, holding is holding. Here's how it's defined. We can debate if it's called enough or not, but we can discuss how it's defined. and we know for a fact when it's called, this is the penalty. So I'm all for that. Like I said, I don't blame Joey for doing what he did. I just wish they would make a bigger point, because I do think, look, this is getting really creative. Like, my hat's off to him, the team, whoever really came up with this. This was really, really creative. It shows me, anyway, how close all these cars are and how much everybody is scrambling for just that tiny little bit. And I really wonder, these new noses, new bodies, we're really going to see what all that means this weekend, I think. And I'm very curious, because we know Chevy's already got a new nose coming. I'm really curious to see where this puts them, relative. Are they going to be chasing now the rest of the year?
Well, this weekend's going to really put that to the test, and we'll see how all these new bodies, the Ford body and the Toyota bodies, really handle an intermediate track. This is the first real week where you can say, all right, we'll be able to really see what these teams got.
And I agreed. And I apologize, Sean, because I know you were kind of getting on the penalties, and I just was being irked about Joey. So my apologies, man. But we got 35-point penalties for both Noah Gragson and Ryan Preece for the air deflectors you talked about that were modified. Those are kind of significant for those guys, right? I mean, let's be fair. That's a whole race's a good finish for either of those guys right now would be a top 10.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to get you about 35 points. Penny on stage points, give or take. That's a whole race, Sean. It's pretty significant.
Oh, yeah. In fact, actually, one of the two teams actually has negative points as of this race going into it now, and the other is exactly at 0. So while both of these drivers were very much in the playoff conversation, like they were right among the cut line there as far as points were concerned, now they have a little bit of work to do and have got to start reeling off some good finishes. Now, it isn't as bad as, say, some of the other penalties that Stewart-Haas Racing faced last year, where that effectively ended their seasons before it even began, but they still got to really work here.
Agreed. And, these are two young drivers that they were already kind of in an uphill battle. So I feel bad for them. I always find it weird when 2 of 4 get hit. When it's 1 of 4, I feel like somebody's trying something. When it's 2 of 4, there's clearly communication among the teams. And look, it's very common for 2 cars to be in one garage. Okay. So NASCAR had always been 2 cars was always a thing. So when these teams grew and expanded, they just kind of built another 2-car facility instead of like building bigger. So like when you went to Hendrick, there was the 24-48 garage, and there was the 88 and the why can I not think of the other number 5? The 88 and the 5 garage. A lot of teams do that. So there is obviously a little more communication between, 2 of the teams typically. But when you start doing that, clearly there's communication amongst multiple people to do this. And to do it unapproved just makes me wonder if they were doing something else. Because a lot of times there's a sleight of hand being played. Look over here, but don't look here type of thing. But when you get popped and get these penalties, you're in trouble. Like that's not a game to be playing with NASCAR.
Especially not now when they're still getting used to all the next-gen cars and still, trying to make sure that there's parity on the racetrack and that these teams don't get such an unfair advantage that's noticeable and damages the racing product.
For sure. Speaking of Hendrick expanded the Xfinity schedule this week for this year. I believe this is the most races Hendrick has run in Xfinity. I don't think they've ever raced as many as 10 races in a year. They always had that kind of relationship with JRM, or I shouldn't say always, but for the most part through Dale Jr.'s Hendrick career anyway, that partnership was there. But 10 races out of what Xfinity does 31, 33?
I believe it is 32.
32. Yeah, I missed. So they'll be doing 10 to 32, all in the number 17 Chevrolet. Did they drop the list on who all the drivers were? I knew it was a mix. Kyle Larson was in on it.
Yep,
Byron.
I have the whole list up here.
Perfect.
There you go. So this is the number 17 Chevrolet schedule for 2024 in the Xfinity Series. It starts with March 9th at Phoenix Raceway with William Byron taking the wheel. Then March 23rd at COTA with Kyle Larson. Then May 11th at Darlington with Byron again. May 25th at Charlotte with Chase Elliott. June 8th at Sonoma Raceway with Boris Said. June 22nd at New Hampshire with Alex Bowman. The Chicago Street Course on July 6th with Kyle Larson, the Pocono race in July with William Byron, the Darlington race in August with Chase Elliott, and then the last race that they have scheduled currently from this list is September 14th at Watkins Glen with William Byron.
Very interesting. I am really excited for the Boris Sedhead show to take place in Sonoma. I'm very much looking forward to that. We will definitely talk that up when we get there. I know Sean and I have briefly talked off air about that, and we're both really excited to see Boris Said back behind a wheel for a race. 60 years old, but I tell you what, that man has taught 3/4, 80% of that, 90% of that garage how to race on road courses. Road course racing in NASCAR is better because of Boris Said. Like, that is a fundamental factual statement. He made NASCAR racing better on road courses with his coaching of other drivers on how to race on street courses and road courses. So I will always respect Boris Said. Hat tip to him, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm a Said head. I may have to get a wig. I may have to bust out a wig that week. I'm just saying.
Oh, I definitely. You know what? We got to make that happen now, Rich. We got to make it happen.
All right. Other big news. Dale Jr. will not be on NBC this upcoming season. Tell us about that.
This news just came out today where The Athletic was reporting that Dale Earnhardt Jr. was not going to renew his contract with NBC and is instead going to be signing with Amazon Prime and Warner Brothers Discovery Sports, where we don't know the details of this, but I think there's a good chance that he's going to be one of the main broadcasters over during the next season when the new TV deal kicks in, that he might be a commentator on the Amazon and the Warner Bros. Discovery, which, that translates to the TNT and Max broadcast there too. So that's big news, big broadcaster news, especially when you go forth that these networks are trying to take off with the new team, be a part of this new deal, but it also affects NBC because Dale Jr. was a huge deal for them with his show, with him being a part of the main commentary team. That is huge right there, Rich. That is huge.
And I tell you what, man, I hate all this stuff going to Prime. Prime is doing a phenomenal job, though, of hiring the right talent. They did it with the NFL. They're doing it here. I'm not a huge fan of Dale in the booth itself. Like, he gets to kind of scream in and getting over the top. But I tell you what, everything else, when you get to him pre-race, when you talk to him post-race, when you let him kind of break down in detail what he's seeing and going on and then cut away, kind of like we've done with Larry Mack. Excuse me. I love it. I love what he brings. He does get a little crazy in the booth. So I'm curious to see how Amazon does it. I just hate all this stuff going to Amazon, man. I mean, I'm not an Amazon shopper, so I don't really have any desire to have Amazon, and I'm having to have Amazon just to watch football and racing, and it's driving me bonkers. It absolutely is driving me bonkers. But it is what it is. I'm curious to see who NBC brings in. That's going to be the real big question, I guess, in my mind. Or
if NBC is just going to stick with the three main commentators that they have with Rick Allen, Steve Letarte, and Jeff Vernon. Still, they're in a team that's grown over time, and I think they've gotten just better year after year with bouncing off of each other and commenting on the races. So even though Junior's going to be gone, and that in and of itself is a big loss, I think that NBC will still be able to carry on and still go from there.
Oh, they'll for sure carry on. I'm just curious. I forgot that when they brought in Junior, they kind of pushed Letarte to a whole different area. Like, they tried him and Letarte together. That didn't work. And then it was him and Burton. And I'm not sure that worked all that well. Kind of curious to see the mix of what they do. The news that I didn't hear that you shared with me here right at the start of the show, this is big news. This is good big news, in my opinion. There are going to be some people that are going to be mad. And I get why, but if you really care about the sport and want the long term of the sport, I think you have to be willing to listen with this news with open ears and open mind. So break it down for us, Sean.
So throughout there's this motorsports reporter, Marshall Pruett. He's very prolific. He writes for Road and Track. He does stuff for ESPN. He does his own thing. But one of the things that he went through was he did a new podcast episode recently, the Marshall Pruett podcast. And during that podcast, he was talking about all different sorts of insider things. He was talking about that he had a list of things that he wrote down on the paper, and he was talking about it on the show. He didn't directly say what they were, just that a lot of things were rumbling between IndyCar and all different sorts of manufacturers. But the interesting thing that he said was the following quote: "If you're a Honda fan and you like NASCAR, you're probably going to be really happy here in the future." What do you think of that quote there, Rich?
To me, it sounds like Honda's interested in coming to NASCAR, and I think NASCAR would love it if Honda came to NASCAR. If you talk about, one on Sundays, bought on Mondays type of thing, Honda makes a lot of sense. Okay. People are going to get up in arms, but look, Honda it's right in line with Toyota. If you want to talk about where vehicles are made, American made, and all that sort of stuff, Honda and Toyota are very close. In fact, Honda, I believe, even has headquarters. I remember doing a study back in high school, and Honda was kind of more American than some of these other companies. So before people get all their hot heads, I hope they understand that. The other part of it, I would love to have 4 manufacturers. Like we said before the show, let's assume, and I think this is a fair assumption, but let's assume all the manufacturers have a set budget to use, and it's probably all comparable to each other. I don't know that anybody is looking to double somebody's budget, racing budget, which this doesn't bring direct. It doesn't bring the direct sales it used to, right? So let's be real honest about that. But there's only so much you're going to be willing to spend in R&D and racing development and advertising. Okay, so let's just assume it's all around the same bucket. Toyota's only spending it on 7 drivers, Sean? I mean, you probably have the list in front of you. Chevy has the most drivers and teams, and Ford is in the middle. So if we're going to have 36 racers every year, I think NASCAR would love to have 4 manufacturers and know that each manufacturer is only going to have 8 or 9 cars. And it's going to make it, again, we've talked about parity last week. Sir, seems like the parity is kind of getting there to almost across the board. This would be another way to help ensure it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But I do think there's some points that are very interesting that could lead to this actually being a reality. And one of the main things is the fact that Honda themselves actually announced that by the end of 2026, they might consider leaving IndyCar, which was where their main motorsport sponsorship is pretty much. And the fact of the matter is, and there's another point here where NASCAR has mentioned before, that for a new body or new manufacturer to be approved into the sport, they need at least 2 years advance in order to make sure that that manufacturer or a new car body is improved for NASCAR specifications and that all the teams can be able to have it. So those are some interesting points to keep in mind, because we're almost running within that exact time frame for maybe a possible Honda entry, maybe by 2027 or so.
Yeah, I was going to say, that makes sense why Mr. Pruitt then is willing to not bold-faced, straight-faced say exactly what's going on, but you don't get the reputation he has and the credentials and access to the things he does by willy-nilly throwing things out there. And that leads me to believe that there's going to be more and more rumors that are going to be tougher to keep a lid on, like Honda getting approval from NASCAR. Once there's a patent and all that, I'm pretty sure those things become public. And there's only so much NASCAR can keep the wraps on. So, I mean, I'll be honest, Sean, is 2026 too soon? Are we sure that some of that hasn't already taken place? And this is why Mr. Pruitt's like, there's some grumblings with meat to them, because, it takes time for the patents to come through and all that. So who's to say Honda hasn't approached NASCAR already? Because NASCAR's handed about an additional manufacturer a couple of times over the recent past, like in the last 6 to 8 months. There's been other kind of allegedly or comments made kind of hinting at things. So maybe it's sooner than we think, man.
I think it's totally possible. But the real interesting question is, what teams could even switch to becoming a Honda team, or what new teams could even enter the picture as a result of Honda joining NASCAR? There's a few different ideas that I have. There's about maybe 3 teams that come to mind to me that I think could make the switch to becoming a Honda team if Honda does enter within the next few years. And in my opinion, I think it's going to be Stewart-Haas, Trackhouse, or maybe even Spire. Those are my
That's
3.
the one. My top one's the one you just named last there, Spire. And the reason I say that, Andretti has a link from what we've understood with the funding that Spire has recently accumulated. Andretti's had a relationship with Honda going back many, many, many years. I think Spire is one of them. I could see Stewart-Haas, but I do think there's enough love with Ford. I'm not sure Stewart would make that move. I could be wrong about that. I don't know, but I could see that. And I think Trackhouse is a very interesting name because I think they are a team that at some point is going to want to be top dog, right? They're not going to be second fiddle to Hendrick. They may be ahead of RCR, but let's face it, RCR isn't going to want to be second fiddle either. RCR is not leaving Chevy, though. I just don't see that happening. Maybe, if he turns over ownership to the grandsons or something like that, or maybe if Kyle Busch is involved, which I think is a possibility with what he's done over there, that maybe we see Kyle Busch be involved in ownership in RCR. I could see some of that, but I got to tell you, right off the top, I think Spire is the one that at the very least would be one of, if not 2 teams that are probably looking to go that route.
I saw a tweet actually that was talking, Adam Stern, one of the big motorsports journalists out there, was retweeting the whole Pruett thing with his podcast and the exact quote. And one of the comments was interesting to me over there, just because it was talking about a prediction that this one person online made, saying that they predict that what will happen is that by 2026, Honda would enter, and that 2 teams that they would predict that to go there would be Trackhouse and Spire, and Spire would basically be bought out by Andretti, like you were saying. And then as a result, 4 new charters would be added from NASCAR in order to compensate adding them,
making it an even number of 40. 4 car manufacturers, 4 teams driving committed to every week, 2 teams leaving Chevy. I mean, now, in all honesty, now our numbers are all kind of matching up, Sean, right? We're down to basically 7 to 9 cars for each manufacturer, if that were to take place, right? Yep. And really, you're filling, and the numbers I didn't even know that, but the numbers we were talking about before the show, I mentioned, they'd love to get the 40, the 4 open spots, but in this case, we wouldn't need them. Very interesting. And just so you guys know, some of this stuff I didn't hear at all. So this is just me and Sean kind of explaining what's going on, and me kind of on the fly. I don't want you guys to think I'm quoting something or I have any sort of weird insight that I don't. So, but what they described there makes a whole heck of a lot of sense to me, Sean. And honestly, those are all the dots that make the most sense to connect for me. They really do.
That's just a comment I saw online of somebody speculating on the whole thing. So
that makes sense.
I think
it wasn't my speculation. Yeah. Wasn't my speculation, but I would sign off on that speculation. So.
Oh, as would I. But the only other reason why I'm also going to bring Stewart-Haas into this conversation, though, too, is just because the fact that Stewart-Haas and their deal with Ford expiring soon. And the fact that they got to find a new manufacturer or decide to renew with Ford, and there's still no news on that yet.
Makes sense. Which, to your point, action speaks louder than words. The fact there's no news, are we sure there isn't some discussions behind the scenes with Stewart-Haas and Honda already about potentials?
Exactly. Or if even Stewart-Haas might even go back to Chevy. We don't even know that either.
Well, that could be. Like I said, for some reason, I could see Stewart wanting to do that. I don't know. Stewart seems more involved with the NHRA program right now and letting the people he's hired to do the stuff. So I'm kind of curious to see where they kind of go with it. Speaking of Stewart-Haas, he's not really with them at all anymore. So no, that doesn't fit. So that was a terrible segue on my part. But let's talk paint schemes for this weekend.
Oh, yes. Here we go. Because this was so much fun to do last week.
Yeah, it was fun. So hit me. Who you got, Sean?
All right, the first paint scheme that I'm going to hit you with is Eric Jones' Dollar Tree scheme. Look at this thing. It's black, white. It's got I especially love the green stripes, which they lifted that directly from the old Dollar Tree logo there on the side of the car. It's a very nice looking scheme. I do like the Dollar Tree spacing is managed just fine there, and it's a car that stands out. I really do think it stands out.
I tell you what, there was a lot of green on the paint schemes this week, and I found it interesting because, the old rule of thumb was you never paint your car green. Green is the grass, and you don't want to keep your car in the grass. So you never paint your car green, and you never have peanuts in the garage area or pit lane. There's a lot of green out there. This is a pretty sharp car. It's not my cup of tea per se, but I can appreciate it. I do like that they pulled the stripes from the old logo.
Oh yeah, it's little details that I especially love, that when these companies pull these off, that they put that into the cars. That's really, really cool.
And I was with you. Your next pick here, it was funny because I saw the one car and then saw his teammate and was like, interesting. I like the sponsor, and I like the fact they're running at Vegas. I think it's a well done opportunity, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and the scheme that Rich is referring to as my next pick is the BetMGM cars for RCR here. So both of the teams, the 3 team of Austin Dillon and the 8 team of Kyle Busch, they're both running MGM cars. They're a little similar looking schemes, but you can tell they're clearly different too. And they use the BetMGM colors. Me personally, I kind of like the Kyle Busch one a little bit more than the Austin Dillon one. So
I do too. I'm with you. I'd agree. And Kyle was on my short list until I got through the rest of the list, and I was like, oh, he got bumped. Sorry, Kyle.
But even so, I just think it's interesting because Kyle Busch, he did run a BetMGM scheme at the Clash, but it's a little bit different from the render here as far as how it looks, which is interesting. So there's that. Now, Rich, hit me with your picks.
All right. I know this is probably going to be a theme all year. It is hard for me to not get attracted to orange and cars. Like, it's just, I love the General Lee. Always have. I've always wanted an orange car. So whenever there's a cool paint scheme with orange, heck, on my racing games, my cars are black and orange. Like, those are the paint schemes I run with. So, why don't you throw up Ross Chastain? Because I got to tell you, this car caught my eye and I loved it.
The Kubota scheme.
Yeah. It's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but I thought it looked sharp. I wish they would have done a different color on the number, but the graphic I looked at on J-Ski with the side view or whatever, or I'm sorry, not a J-Ski, on NASCAR.com. The red didn't quite look as crazy or weird, but I do like the Kubota scheme, man. I think it looks good.
Oh, yeah. I actually really like it. I almost considered this for one of my picks as well. I do think this is one of the better looking schemes of the week. The orange really stands out. And I just found it interesting as I was getting the image for the show here that the paint scheme was actually voted upon by fans between 2 different options. And this was the option that won. So I think the fans, they made a good job and good call with this paint scheme because this looks fast and it looks like it can fly.
I agree. And my other top one, and I think it's more maybe because of the sponsor, and I love the way it looked on the side of the car, was Tyler Reddick.
Yeah, the nasty beast scheme.
Yes. It's nothing crazy or anything, but I just felt like the scheme matched the sponsor and name on it. You know what I mean? And knowing Tyler Reddick is kind of a really cool, awesome guy, just very genuine. You would never really consider him a beast, so to speak. I just think it's all very, very fitting and pretty solid. I like it. The Nasty Beast, number 45.
Oh, yeah. I'm a fan of this scheme as well. The only reason why I didn't really put it up as one of my picks was mainly just because Reddick already ran this scheme at Daytona. And from there, it was already acknowledged as the Nasty Beast. But still, it's a very good-looking paint scheme for Monster Energy. I think it fits the branding very well. The yellow really just slashes aggressively. It puts Nasty Beast in perspective because this paint scheme is a nasty beast.
It is. Now, did you happen to save a shot of my honorable mention? Because I'm curious what image you did save. When I was scrolling through on the NASCAR media page, this car jumped out. This has an old school look and this is what I like about it. It just reminds me of an old paint scheme. Steve Park's paint scheme was very, very similar to this. And it very much reminded me of it. I think it's very clean looking. I like it. I just think it really kind of pops, the black and yellow. And hey, Joey Logano sponsored by Pennzoil this week. And the race is also sponsored by Pennzoil, presented by Jiffy Lube. So here we go. Just saying, little story narrative for him in here. Just throwing it out there.
It's not the first time that Joey's ran this particular paint scheme as well. He's ran it in past Las Vegas events when Pennzoil has been the title sponsor as well. So this is that scheme popping up again. But I've always liked this scheme as well. Very much a classic look. My only thing is I wish they would have done a little bit more at the very end of the sides there. Just put something there because that blank space just isn't being used that much. Maybe even put some more stripes there.
Heck, I'd sell it for sponsorship area, man. Of course, Pennzoil may not want that. It's always fun to look at those paint schemes, but let's get into the nitty gritty here. Let's talk about Vegas a little bit and cut some strategy, because we're going to have to employ a little bit different strategy than what we have the last couple of weeks, both for betting and for DFS purposes. So in your opinion, Sean, what should we expect from this track and what type of racing should we see?
Well, for one, there's not going to be a good chance of it being a wreck fest like the last 2 weeks. That is for darn sure. But for two, it's an intermediate track. And with intermediate tracks, one of the prime things that you got to look for in DFS especially is dominators, because this is the sort of track where a driver could just go out, get far ahead, and just maintain and stay right there. And that's one of the biggest differences between Las Vegas compared to Daytona or Atlanta, where that isn't likely to be as commonplace as, say, an intermediate track like Las Vegas there. That's one thing that we got to start putting DFS lineups around, Rich.
If Vegas had as many lead changes as what we see at Daytona and even Atlanta, Vegas would be losing its shit. People would be losing their marbles if we got that type of lead changes at Vegas that we would see at Daytona or Atlanta. So I'm 100% with you. A prime example, I'll just give the truck one because I was kind of digging into that before the show. Kyle Busch in this race last year led 84 of 134 laps. I mean, that's significant points. There's probably a bunch of fast laps mixed in with those laps led. That's significant. The tricky part for DFS purposes is you have to hit on that dominator. You have to. It's nice when it's an easy call and it's a chalky play, right? Like if Kyle Busch qualifies, say, 15th or 16th, everybody and their brother is going to be on him. He's probably going to be off the charts type of chalky, even beyond the 70% we're probably going to see or something like that. So we absolutely have to. There's no getting around it. If we don't hit on that, it's an uphill battle. I'm not saying you can't cash, but at that point, you have to hope the dominator is less than 10% owned or you're done. You're not going to have a prayer.
Oh, definitely. And as far as the DFS is concerned versus the betting, though, the betting, I think, in Daytona and Atlanta, we have to really spread our bets around a lot for those tracks in order to have a bet hit. But compared to that at Vegas, we can kind of put a little bit more into just the few drivers rather than just spreading it out more so through the majority of the field, because really, most of the time when it comes to these intermediate tracks, a lot of the favorites do tend to go up there, be competitive for the win. And then maybe you'll see somebody that's like in the middle of the pack, maybe here and there on occasion, just compete for the win there at betting. It's quite different between DFS and betting in that respect.
For the most part, we're going to see the favorite lines shrink, right? Instead of seeing 800, 900 or 1,000 even for some of the top three favorites, we're going to see 3, 4, 5 drivers below plus 1,000. At the same time, you're going to have plenty of those long shots in the back, but don't go chasing those long shots. What we got last week was a very odd thing. Like I can't hit this home enough. I really believe Vegas just had the line wrong. based on his track history, based on his performances and that style of racing, I really don't know what they were banking it on. It made no sense. I mean, they pulled up the graphic in the middle of the race. Truex had never won in that style of racing, yet he was literally half of what Daniel Suarez's odds were. And yeah, Suarez had never won either, but he doesn't have the long history. And quite frankly, he's had better finishes. So look, I'll highlight in the overview articles anything I personally see that I think is way out of line and is worth a shot as a novelty $1, $2, $3 bet type of thing, just because the line is so off, it's worth a shot. But look, all the bets we're probably going to be looking at are going to be drivers anywhere from that plus 300-400 range up to 1,200, 1,400, maybe 16, 1,800. But that's kind of the range we're going to be looking at. And those 16, 1,800 type odds, those are more of your long shot odds. That's just the way it is. I do think there's more parity in Cup, and this may change a little bit as we get through the year. I mean, if the teams like Spire and Front Row take that step forward like we think, then we might start seeing odds that are getting closer to what we see at the plate racetracks. But it's not what we're going to see for a race. It's not what we should bank on. And look, we got to make sure we find drivers that are fast, drivers that are going to lead laps. And yes, you still want those place differentials. And no, I'm not worried about someone that has a bad day of qualifying, them being stuck in the back, like say at Martinsville. But don't go be chasing dreams here that don't exist, I guess is what I'm getting at.
I think that is a very good point to make overall there, Rich, just because you can't be relying. This is not a race where everybody has an equal chance to win. This is purely just the best teams with the best cars and the best strategy. They're the ones that are going to win this race, and the best equipment overall too. So this is why I think more than anything, we should segue this to the next important point, and that's practice. Practice is going to be very, very important this weekend, because this is going to be the first real gauge of these teams to show us what they really have. And that's also going to be big as far as betting, because that's really what's going to swing the lines either higher or lower, and just really quickly.
Yeah. And, it's a shame we don't get as much info from practice like we used to. It's a much more condensed time. There's a lot less they can do to the car. And we learned last year, be careful. We don't get to see. Used to, you could bank on the 10, 15 lap averages. Those were real good indicators of who to keep your eye on. We don't get chances. Some of the short tracks will get, that amount of laps. But here again, at those short tracks, you really want 20, 30 lap averages, which we used to get, and we don't anymore. So we got to be very careful in not putting too much emphasis on practice times. I will say this. How do I want to say this? I think it's imperative for us to watch practice in qualifying, not so much everybody, but I'm of the belief because we have such a condensed practice, there's only so much info we have. The best info we're going to get, in my opinion, is from the teams and the drivers. And while they don't share all the secrets and everything, the other drivers know when they get done with practice and when they've rolled off and they've looked at data, they've gone back and watched previous races. Pay attention to the words they say. They know, you hear them say things like, we probably got a top 5, top 10 car. I'm not sure we got enough to hang with, the number 9 out there. And boy, that 11 looks quick too. But, it will be all right. Take away from that, note the 9, note the 11. Not saying you don't note this particular driver, but the fact that they're saying things like that, that's a tip-off of who they think has a car to beat and who they're kind of shooting for.
Oh, definitely. But not just that. You do want to notice the speeds, though, too. I do think that's also important, just in the fact that you want to notice anybody that really is much faster than the pack, or anybody that's much slower than the rest of the pack there too, because that's how you can also really tell if somebody's feeling their car, or if somebody is just really, really off on their setup, and then they have to go forth and just put everything in the kitchen sink with it there for the actual race trim. So it's also important to really make a note of that too, and just also notice the different sorts of lap averages. Here with Vegas, I'm expecting it to maybe go up to 15 or 20 lap averages, and noticing all the changes between how much a car drops off between that time, I think is also important to notice who is going to be really good and who is not going to be as good, especially since Vegas is one of those tracks where we can expect a long green flag run, where running a car over time is going to be huge.
Do you think practice is long enough now that we'll get those consecutive lap averages? Because I'm really fearful we won't, because we haven't been.
I feel like it depends on the track more than anything. I think this is kind of Vegas or any intermediate track. I think it would be for a fair middle ground unless the practice is affected by weather, in which case then all bets are off.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I'm looking forward to being able to have some practice because we need some data, and especially for the Cup side of things with the new nose for Ford and the new body for Toyota, we really need to see something. And I wasn't trying to downplay and say, don't look at them at all. It's just my experience with this new car, especially with this new car and the condensed practice session, it has not been anywhere near as predictable as far as carrying over from practice to race. And I don't know if that's because the car's more sensitive to temperature and track changes. And I don't know if that's more the teams have finally found ways to make significant swings when they need to. In the past, we haven't, right? Like, you can only go so much on tire pressure. You can't change springs, these sorts of things. So I'm curious. I just know the last 2 years, man, the practice times have really kind of burned me. And so I'm really trying to make a point to focus on what some of the other drivers are saying and the teams are saying, because there's been a lot of carryover. There hasn't been many times when I've heard multiple teams reference a driver and that wasn't a driver to watch throughout the race. You know what I mean?
Truly there, Rich.
As you said, this is the first intermediate track. This is the meat and potatoes. We got quite a few of these we go to. So if Toyota missed on this body, for example, it's going to be a long season. I don't think that's going to be the case. I'm fearful that Chevy's going to be chasing all year long, and that's what we're going to start to see at this race. Things will change. The season's long enough. We'll see things evolve throughout, but it's something to note. Speaking of the Cup race, Derek, you mentioned this last week, but Derek Kraus is making his Cup Series debut in the number 16 Kaulig racing machine. What are your thoughts on that overall?
I think as far as Derek Kraus goes, I think what we should expect is just a driver that's trying to finish the race on the lead lap. Usually when you get drivers that are rookies or drivers that have no experience, they're just out there getting seat time. The goal for them most of the time is just to make sure to finish on the lead lap and just stay out of trouble. And I think as far as Derek Kraus is going to go, and I'm going to jump a little bit ahead here towards talking about him as a potential DFS value pick. I think as far as the price is concerned, he's about 5,200 on DraftKings. I think it's worth taking a shot, especially in Kaulig racing equipment that is capable of placing top 25, maybe even top 20. As long as Derek Kraus keeps it out of trouble, as long as he doesn't make too many mistakes, that could really be quite the bargain and could really make him a nice DFS sleeper to round out a lineup and save a lot of cap flexibility there.
Depending on where he qualifies, he's almost a must play at the cost, right? Like, as long as he qualifies 28th, 29th, or further back, I think it's well worth the value. If he qualifies inside the top 25, it's going to be a tough play for me because I just don't know that we get enough of a likelihood of for sure being in that top 20, top 15, being the rookie, inexperienced. Things happen, from being in the wrong place at the wrong time, that's out of your control type of things, messing up coming onto pit road speeding. There's a lot of things these young guys go through when they step up the Cup level. And when you hear folks like, Brad talking about he really wanted to watch Joey Logano because he shaves a second on and off pit road by on average a year better than everybody else at that track. That's significant. These are professional guys that do this year in, year out. And Joey Logano is finding a way to make up nearly a second or half a second or whatever it is on a lap in, lap out situation around the pit stops. And now you've got a rookie and you expect him to be somewhat on par with that. And we're going to do green flag pit stops most likely, like you pointed out with the long runs. I need him to qualify in the back. The value is there. I definitely have more faith in that equipment than some of the other priced picks back there, but I really hope he doesn't qualify too well. And theoretically, he could. I mean, there's enough speed in that car. He could be a 16th place qualifier.
Oh, yeah. From there, if he qualifies that high, strictly GPP play only. And that's just being generous right there.
Yeah, I would agree. Because, I mean, at a real contrarian, less than 1% ownership type of play, you go that route. And you need him to be a top 10 finisher or it doesn't work. I don't care how cheap he is.
Because if anything, while Kraus, he's shown through his limited Xfinity starts that he knows how to get out of trouble. He knows how to maintain a car until the end. He's a solid enough driver. But as far as his inexperience goes, all we have to really go on is just his equipment there with Kaulig Racing. And that equipment is about top 25, top 20 at best sort of equipment. So that's honestly where I'm expecting him to maybe finish somewhere within the top 30, maybe top 20 if he has a good day. But if he ends up qualifying better than that, though, I'm not really going to be using him that much at all in DFS, really.
So what are some of your favorite drivers to watch this weekend then? We might as well start hitting on some of the top dogs. Who do you got?
So as far as top price picks are concerned, there's a bunch of drivers that we have to keep our eye on, but I think the team that we have to pay attention to more than anything is Hendrick Motorsports, particularly with Kyle Larson and William Byron, just because Hendrick as a whole, they've won 3 of the last 4 Vegas races. Larson is the most recent winner at this track where he dominated. And Byron, he won this exact event last year. And of course, it wasn't also a dominating performance there too, while Larson also led quite a few laps in that as well. And the other Hendrick driver to win in that span is Alex Bowman. I don't like him as much as the other two, or heck, even I like Chase Elliott a little more than Bowman, just because I feel like Elliott's clicked a little bit more with the equipment overall. But all these Hendrick drivers, I think they have the capability to finish well. But I think if you're going to go through Vegas and if you're going to try to win, you have to go up against Kyle Larson. I think he is the driver to beat just based on recent history alone. You look back within those last 4 races, or heck, you can even look back since 2021 when he joined Hendrick. Only 1 finish outside the top 10, and he has 4 finishes of second or better since 2021, and that includes 2 wins in that span. I think if you're going to win at Vegas, it's going to have to go through Kyle Larson. I think he is the favorite to beat.
I'm very torn on this, Sean. I'm with you. And it almost seems too good to be true with Hendrick, right? And what they've done here. And here's where my apprehension comes in. We know for a fact, people can get mad at me, but I've heard this from folks in the garage. Chevy has had an aero advantage with this car. NASCAR doesn't want that info out. That's not what NASCAR wanted. That's partially why Ford's already changed the nose once, or Toyota did, or both did. There was already changes made because they knew this problem. They don't even want people talking about it. I can't let go of the Ford nose and the Toyota change. When I looked at history over the top 10, even with the new car and going back before the new car, Joey Logano and Martin Truex were absolutely insane. Truex has more top 10s in the last 10 years than any other driver. He's got 9. And only one, I wrote it up in the article and I don't have it in front of me, but in the overview article, I highlight on some really interesting points as how low he's finished and where he hasn't. This has been with a guy who, admittedly, they know Toyota has known they've had some challenges behind this car and nose at these tracks, and Chevy's had an advantage. I can't get past Truex and Logano as big focal points out of this group. Blaney, I feel like kind of limps in there as well. He ran well at the fall race in Vegas. I believe he finished 6th or something like that and looked quite good. And the Fords have notoriously been really struggling at these venues. So I almost feel like I want to fade from the Hendrick Chevy plan, and maybe I'm wrong, but I have a feeling a lot are going to go with the Hendrick Chevy plan, and because of the new nose and body, I'm going to gamble elsewhere. I'm going to try to be a little contrarian, and I'm leaning into Martin Truex and Joey Logano.
Overall, my comments on those plays, I like the Logano option just because Fords do tend to run pretty good at Las Vegas overall. Logano has strong history there. And I don't dislike the Truex play either. But what I will say is I don't think Truex is going to be the one that's going to win this race. But I do think that he is going to likely finish top 10. And the interesting thing here is recent history-wise, in the last 6 races, only one driver has finished in the top 10 in each of them, and that is Martin Truex Jr. So I see Truex as kind of the play for consistency. And if you want to make a top 10 bet, there you go. Martin Truex Jr. top 10. I'd say go and hit that right there. But Yeah, Truex, Logano, both solid plays. Blaney, I think, is going to be a good option too, because Team Penske generally runs very well at Las Vegas, and overall, Blaney's had some good, strong finishes at the site as well. Now, I want to bring up some other drivers that I think we should pay attention to. In particular, the two I want to mention are Tyler Reddick and Ross Chastain. Just because Reddick, he's another one of those drivers, again, Toyota driver, new body, that could play in his favor here, but Reddick is also one of the more consistent drivers in recent years at Vegas, with 4 top 10s in the last 5 Vegas races. So that's one reason why I am really interested in Reddick, especially as it seems 2311 is getting better each and every year with their equipment. And then as for Ross Chastain, he has 3 top 5 finishes in the last 4 races. Pretty much ever since he joined Trackhouse Racing, he's always been very, very good at Vegas, led in 2 of the last 4 events there. And especially because you have to consider the Trackhouse momentum too, with the fact that Daniel Suarez won last week at Atlanta. So Chastain, I think he's one you have to watch as well.
I don't disagree with either of those picks. I like them both. We should see a good race. There's plenty of fast cars and talent and that's why I said I feel like everybody's kind of probably be on the Chevy Hendrick thing. And so to be a little different, I think I'm willing to gamble. And like I said, I very well could be wrong here, Sean. The dominance by them has been phenomenal. So the logic all points that direction. I'm one of those types when everything's going one way, I want to be the dude that goes the other way. I've had better luck doing so. I would have no problem rolling with the Reddick or the Chastain options at all. I really don't. Qualifying will clearly play into that, right? I mean, if Chastain qualifies 20th and Reddick qualifies 6th, I'm probably going to, it may be chalky to go Chastain, but I'm going to take a chance and say, I think they both are probably going to finish in the same area. Give me the 15 bonus points from Chastain, and I'm going to let that ride and hope that I, score a couple of more points from him that way, right? So I'm with you. I'm really curious about your mid-tier drivers here, because I tell you what, Chris, I just blew the lead here. My apologize, Sean. Chris Buescher really wasn't on my short list, and you've got him listed here. So tell me what you're seeing there that really you like.
Well, Chris Buescher, as far as that is concerned, it's because it's RFK, and RFK was looking pretty good at the Las Vegas race overall. Even though Buescher, historically, he hasn't been the strongest play when it comes to Las Vegas, because he only has 1 top 10 finish throughout 14 starts in his entire career. But I think that Buescher, you're looking at mid-tier drivers that are going to finish around top 15, maybe could sneak their way into the top 10. I think Buescher can fit that mark, especially if he qualifies deep in the field. After all, Buescher, he's never been the strongest qualifier at Las Vegas, with only scoring a top 10 starting position once in his entire career. But he's finished top 15 in 2 of the last 3 Vegas races. So I think he's one of those drivers that you won't think of as an obvious play in order to go forth and have a decent finish. But I think Buescher is more than capable of scoring that. And for the price, I do think I like him enough to try it. That's
fair. And he really has. Look, I've been kind of a Chris Buescher fan. I feel like he's been underrated, underappreciated. He stepped in a tough situation. I applaud Brad, who had made a point last year that all the new stuff, all the upgrades, that started out going with Chris Buescher first before Brad was getting it. To me, that's the sign of a true leader. I know a lot of people don't like Brad Keselowski. I do. I think he's a heck of a human beyond I think he's a great race car driver. I like his attitude. I don't mind the aggressiveness. I feel like he's very honest and forthright with everyone, speaks his mind, and I appreciate it. Some folks don't like it, and I get it, but I got no problem with it. And I like what RFK is doing. And you and I have talked about it numerous times. We're really curious to watch how RFK performs this year. Between the new nose, the upgrades Brad's seen, the changes since he's, taken on part ownership over there. This is not the same team that he joined 2 years ago. So really curious to see how both of them look. You also got Eric Jones and Ty Gibbs listed here. I'm with you more on the Ty Gibbs train. Not a lot of history, obviously, at the Cup Series, but say what you want, Silver Spoon, all that nonsense. I've watched the kid in ARCA coming up. I met him at Elkhart when I went to a race there one year. the dude wins on everything I've seen him race. And this is at every level. And I was not shocked to see him kind of start slowly with the Cup cars, especially this car. We went for years and years in NASCAR. When rookies stepped up, they really never performed. There was a steep learning curve going to the next level of about a year. Someone like Jeff Gordon did in about a half a year, and that kind of started a train where we started seeing it happen with younger drivers and all that, and the Kyle Busches and the Joey Logano's and rookies getting wins. But until Jeff Gordon did that, it had been quite a while since we had seen a rookie win a race. Now, as we got into this new car, you're seeing that. Noah Gragson really struggled a little bit. I'm kind of hopeful we see him kind of turn the page here with Stuart Haas. That said, Carson Hocevar looked good in that same equipment that Noah Gragson didn't at the end of last year. So there's clearly something that overlapped for Carson Hocevar from the Truck Series to the Cup Series that he liked. We've seen this with Jimmy Johnson, did do all that well in Xfinity, jumped in a Cup car, looked really great from the word go. Denny Hamlin was kind of that way. So that's not always uncommon, but I'm with you on Ty Gibbs. I think this year is going to be a momentum changer for him. But hit me with Eric Jones a little bit. We've talked about legacy, but maybe I'm missing some stats this week on Jones.
So I do want to, before I touch on Jones, I'm going to touch on this with Ty Gibbs, because even though the history with Ty Gibbs in particular has not been that good so far through 3 Cup starts at Las Vegas, we have to keep him in mind because A, he's in Joe Gibbs Racing equipment, which is some of the best equipment of the field, and B, his resume at Vegas in the Xfinity Series is very, very strong. He has 1 win there, a top 4th place finish in his last start. He led in both of his last 2 Xfinity starts at Las Vegas. I think Gibbs is now at the point where he's starting to get more and more comfortable with these cars, that I think you have to really consider him for the price, especially because the whole thing is that a lot of the drivers from the mid-tier price range on downwards, they have such mixed history at Las Vegas. And Eric Jones is one of those such cases, because he's had races where he's ran inside the top 10. He's scored positive place differential. After all, Jones has scored positive place differential in 2 of his last 3 starts at Las Vegas, even though the last 2 finishes at Vegas for Jones weren't exactly that amazing. Let's put it that way. But I think as far as Legacy Motor Club is concerned, they're another team that I think you just have to kind of watch practice and see, just because Legacy, they're now a prime Toyota partner. They could be getting more factory support. The cars could be even better. So I think Jones has the potential to surprise, but I'm just not fully sold on him yet. But he's one that I think we should keep an eye on through practice, at least.
I'm with you. And overall for the year, I have higher hopes for Jones. I think we're going to see them improve as we go. And I think Eric Jones has plenty of talent. Like I said, when I was looking through things, that's not one of the names that really jumped at me for this track. But I know he's going to be a name that's going to come up for me numerous times throughout the year. As far as some of the mid ones I kind of do like Bowman. If I was going to do a Chevy guy, or a Hendrick guy, it's probably him because of the price point. He is so cheap. If he qualifies in the front, no, because I'm thinking he's going to be a top 10, maybe 15 finisher. So I don't want to be dealing with any minus points, but I do think he'll finish the race. I think he'll be just fine. Same equipment as the other guy. He actually has a pretty good Vegas overall records regarding the top 5s and top 10s for the last 10 races. So I'm willing to gamble a little bit there. Like I said, I was with you on Gibbs. I see the same thing. I think we're going to start seeing the talent that we've been raving about that we didn't get to see much last year. I think we're going to start to see that. Look, we've talked about Brad. A lot of history here. There's a lot unknown because of that window when he switched teams and all that, but he's got to be in the mix. And look, we've talked about the Penske cars. We've already talked about Blaney and Logano. At $7,000 or $7,200, whatever it is, Austin Cindric's got to be on the radar. Again, qualifies up front, which is very plausible with him. A little more dangerous, but at $7,000, if he's middle of the pack, I'm willing to gamble there.
I agree with you on Cindric. I think he is definitely one of those drivers that I think is worth the consideration to gamble on, just because he's in Team Penske equipment. I mentioned it earlier. Team Penske runs very well at this track. Even though Cindric's history is a little bit shaky overall, he only has 1 top 10 finish in 4 starts, with that being a 6th place finish at this track exactly 1 year ago. So Cindric, he's one for the price point that I would take a chance on just because the equipment is there. And I think this is the sort of season that, well, after a sophomore slump, this is the first real time we could see Cindric. If he looks good in practice, it might be some signs that he could be one to watch through the rest of the year too.
I totally agree. I know he's done well at the pack racing, but that was already a name I've kind of circled where I'm like, all right, he's been really kind of underpriced so far. Joey looks like to be back in top form. Blaney's right there with him. We need to watch. Austin Cindric was another guy that, it's not like he set the world on fire his first year in Xfinity, but by that second, third year in Xfinity, there was no denying he was one of the best drivers and consistent drivers. He's another one of those drivers you talked about before, knows how to take care of the equipment, knows how to finish races. He spent the last year to 2 years here just kind of learning. I'm ready to start, don't be selling him short, I guess is what I'm saying. You know what I mean? As we go forward here.
Right.
I tell you what, some of the value plays are a little tougher because honestly, qualifying is going to be a big factor in this. I mean, no matter how cheap some of these drivers are, if they have a great qualifying run, those negative points from where they finish can be absolutely huge. But I'll give you a list of a couple of I'm keeping on pre-qualifying, and I want you to touch on some of the ones because most of ours don't overlap at this point yet. But look, at John Hunter Nemechek's rate, he's so cheap. He's a legacy guy, Toyota, right there with Eric Jones. A lot of the things we like about Eric Jones, except John Hunter actually has pretty good record. I shouldn't say actually because Eric did too, but a pretty good record here at Xfinity and otherwise. He's already kind of found a way to finish up front the last couple of weeks when he shouldn't have. Zane Smith, again, front row equipment. Supposedly they're taking that step with Ford. $5,200 or whatever it was. His price is silly cheap, in my opinion. So, again, I'll take a shot on Zane. I think he's a top 25 finisher, even in the equipment he's in. Again, qualifying will matter. I'm really honest. I'm not sure I want to put David Gilliland in a lineup because I expect him to do. Oh, my God. Did I talk about his dad again? Todd Gilliland. Thank you, Sean. I'm so old, bro. Todd Gilliland, he's done well in the plate races. We kind of expect it, though. I'm curious to see if anything's going to translate. He's led so far this year, more than he's ever had, but we haven't really seen him perform on this type of track yet.
Todd Gilliland, funny you should mention about him leading laps because, believe it or not, he's the current lap leader of all drivers so far after 2 races this season.
Seriously?
Yeah, seriously. He's led more laps than any other driver in the Cup Series through 2 races. So, how's that for
shame on me? I didn't know that. That's nuts.
But as far as Todd Gilliland, I'm waiting to see how he does in practice before I lock in on him. You mentioned a few other drivers there too. John Hunter Nemechek, I put him in the same boat as Todd Gilliland, that I want to see how he does in practice first before I lock myself into him. But as far as Zane Smith is concerned, though, he's a pick that I am already considering to be one of those drivers that's already on my radar, just because he may not have a lot of experience at intermediate tracks, but we do have 2 previous starts that we can go off of, and both times he was driving in front row motorsports equipment. Both races, he ended up scoring positive place differential both times, a 10th place at Charlotte in May 2023 and a 24th place finish at Texas in September 2023. So I think he's one that for the price, I would take a shot on Zane Smith there for DFS. But as for the other 2 you mentioned, I'm just not sure yet until I see a little more data.
Totally fair. And a good point about Zane Smith too. He's also running the truck race. Or no, Xfinity. Truck. No, it's truck race.
He is running the truck race.
Yeah, he's running the truck race. So I always like betting on guys or leaning on guys that are doing double duty. Christopher Bell's another one, right? Just because I get there's not a lot of transfer, but look, give these guys more time behind a wheel on the track they're going to drive. I don't care if it's a street car. They are going to learn and pick up stuff, and track's picking up rubber. This turn's going to be I'm going to have to watch this as the night goes on. They will be getting all sorts of information. So I'm with you on all those guys. Like I said, a lot of it's going to be depending on qualifying, especially for me when I start looking at these value picks. So I don't disagree. But like you mentioned on Zane, and those are some great numbers. His cost is so cheap. honestly, even if he took a minus 4 or 5 points in place differential, he's probably worth the cost.
Oh, for sure. I think the price is too good in order to ignore Zane Smith as one of the value picks in order to watch this week.
For sure. Did you want to touch on any of the other drivers, or should we move on to our bets for the week?
One other driver that I am going to mention just because I think this is a driver that nobody is really talking about, but I think people should have on their radar a little bit more than they think, is Josh Berry, believe it or not. How about
I like
that?
that call.
Just because even though Josh Berry, he does not have a lot of experience in these Cup cars. He only has one finish at Vegas substituting for Chase Elliott last year. But he did score positive place differential in a car that really was dealing with problems that day. And despite that, Vegas is one of Josh Berry's tracks in the entire Xfinity Series schedule. It's not to be understated. You look back towards 6 starts in the Xfinity Series, 5 top 5 finishes, including 2 wins. Only one finish outside of the top 5. Only one finish outside the top 10, and that was a 12th place finish. He's led also in 4 of his 6 Xfinity starts there. Really strong track record at Las Vegas, and even though it's a different car, he's already on my radar as a potential value pick. And still, even though it's Stewart-Haas, that's still one of the better teams when you get down towards those deep price points in order to consider.
Wow, I did not know his stats were that insane for Xfinity, man. I like that call because I tell you what, no one is calling him. No one is on him. So, I mean, if you want to talk about a value play that's a little bit lower ownership, man, if he qualifies 25th, 20th, I don't know that a lot of people will be on him. You know, if he qualifies 30th back, he's probably going to become chalky. But if he qualifies 20, 22, 23, something like that, I don't know how chalky he'll be. I mean, he's probably going to be a solid contrarian prey at that value. And look, that team will be quite upset if they don't finish inside the top 20. So,
I do want to also make a reference towards the fact the last 4 finishes that Kevin Harvick made with the 4 car, 12th, 12th, 9th, 16th. All of those were finishes with positive place differential. Something to note there, too.
There we go. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on to our core 4 betting winners because we are running a little long, so we apologize. It's probably my fault more than anyone. So here we go, Sean. Let's rattle these off, bud. Hit me with your core 4 bets for the weekend for the Cup Series.
Now, these are my 4 drivers that I think are going to be the ones that I'll bet on to win as of right now before qualifying. Kyle Larson at plus 450, Ross Chastain at plus 1,000, Christopher Bell at plus 1,000. And this last one is kind of like my sleeper / play that nobody can expect, but it's going to be Bubba Wallace at plus 2,000. Just because overall, Larson, like I said earlier, I think he's the driver to beat based on history. Chastain's been really, really good at Vegas since joining Trackhouse. Christopher Bell, I know we didn't talk much about him, but I think he's also a really strong play with the finishes to back it up in recent history at Las Vegas. So I would definitely take a shot at that. And as for my Bubba Wallace call, that has more to do with his recent history at 1.5 intermediates when he's just been one of the best overall drivers at that track type. You got to look back towards the fact with how many top 5 finishes he even rattled up at 1.5 tracks last year. It's actually kind of insane because the only other driver that I would say is about the same level, if not better, was William Byron last year.
Wow. I didn't realize he did that well in the intermediates last year. I knew he did better overall. I mean, I was leaning on him week to week, but a lot of that was cost, qualifying position, that sort of thing.
Here, let me rattle off some of the finishes here. 4th at Las Vegas last year. 4th at Kansas. 4th at Charlotte. He finished 3rd at Texas last year. And then the second Vegas race, he finished 13th. How is that for strong performances right there?
That really is. So I'm a little different on my core 4 bets. I typically stay away from favorites. It's just a me thing. I haven't had a lot of luck betting favorites. I tried a little thing one year where I was like, I'm just going to always bet the favorite and make 3 or 4 other bets and bet the favorite such that if it wins, it covers my other bets at the very least. what I found was favorites didn't win enough of the time for that theory to work out very well. They do win, but if I had to guess, and I did a poor job of tracking it back then, I bet it's 30% or less. So because of that, I just, as a general rule, I will just kind of not do that bet. There's nothing wrong with the bet. I think that's a smart bet. It's just not how I do it. I'm just being transparent about that. So for me, my first bet is Kyle Busch at plus 900. I'm not sold RCR's back there yet. It's a little rich for what I think Kyle Busch's number should be, but he did run well in the Cup race there last year, winning it. I think, hold on. He won the truck race.
That is correct, because his 2 finishes last year were 14th in this race 1 year ago, and then 3rd in the fall race.
That's right. It was the fall race where he turned around and had a much better finish. I put all this in the article, and I'm spacing on it, Sean, so I apologize. But the 3rd in last year's fall race, again, I'm a little worried with the whole Ford Toyota thing, but this is Kyle Busch's home track. He takes a lot of pride in running well here. So he is on my short list. I'm with him on Bell. We haven't talked much about Bell, but the numbers back it up. I'm right there with him on Bell. And maybe the fact that the both of us are kind of already looking that way should be a kind of hat tip to everybody, a red flag, green flag, whatever you want to call it. Exactly. I do think Martin Truex can win. And maybe I'm holding on to too many of the intermediate wins he's had in the past when he has absolutely dominated at these tracks. What I see so far this year from him is much better pack racing than we've ever seen from him before. That tells me he's more comfortable in this car and he's willing to race it. I think the body's going to be better. He has been they've been behind, and he has 9 top 10s in this last 10 races there. Nobody else is even close to that. I think he's due at plus 1,400. I think it's long enough. I do. That's my favorite bet. That's the one I'm going with. And y'all can have me eat crow next week. I will be willing to do so, because there's nothing wrong with what Sean said, but that's just, and it is more of a gut shot. Joey Logano at plus 1,100. Again, the guy's been hot. I get it's been the pack races, but you can tell the confidence in the interviews, the way he's carrying himself. Homeboy's ready to start taking names and, kicking butt. So give me Logano. And Blaney did run well there in the fall. And like I said, the whole Ford Toyota thing is what I'm stuck on. You'll see the only Chevy I've got really listed here is Kyle Busch. It's his home track. Otherwise, I'm a Ford Toyota guy this week. I'm going with my gut and saying the new car, new nose is going to be significant. And that's where I'm laying my money.
Interesting picks there overall. But like I said earlier regarding Truex, I think if you want to lock in a top 10 bet with him, I think you absolutely should do that more than anything. Just because he's 6 for 6 on the last 6 races on that stat. So that's actually very, very good marker in case you wanted to bet that in particular there. I'm not as confident in him winning as, say, some of his Toyota teammates, but I don't think it's unfounded either. I think the chance is there. I just don't believe in him as much as some of the other Toyota drivers in order to win.
Vegas is right with you, right? I mean, it's a pretty significant change from Bell to Truex. I mean, we look at it plus 1,000, big deal, plus 1,400. Folks, that's a 40% difference. So, I mean, I am kind of a little bit on an island here, and I'll be frank with everyone. This is more of a gut shot kind of thing. But look, part of what I do, and I do it in football, is some of the gut shot stuff. I'm just very transparent about it. I'm not suggesting y'all jump all in, but I also know a few of you have told me, nope, we just want to know what your gut says. So I'm giving it to you. That's where we're at. Come practice. Some of this can change. I mean, we talked about there. I went back and watched the show last week after the race to kind of see what overlapped and did. We did have some changes from Thursday to Friday and Sunday, but there was a lot of things that did carry over. In fact, we got more excited about Daniel Suarez from Thursday's show all the way to Sunday. So, keep that stuff in mind. The product as a whole is the way to go. That's why it's important to come to fantasyguru.com, sign up for the Game Time MVP package, $74.99, get you all the NHL, NBA, soccer, PGA, MMA, horse racing with Slappy. The education from Slappy alone on horse racing is worth the $75. NASCAR, we've already won that back for you this year. Come on, join, be a part of it. Get in the Discord with us. Discord's where it's at.
Yes.
Hop in the man's cave and talk to Jeff. Just saying, throwing that out there. Me and Sean will be manning NASCAR all year long. Hit us up. So We will make some changes. The best way to stay up to date is with Discord and the membership, so please take advantage of that. Before we take off, though, Sean, let's quickly hit it. I'll be honest with folks. You're going to see a core 3 from me this week in Discord. I'm trying something new, trying to pivot a little bit. You know, Jeff and Armando and those guys, they like to do a core 4, but basketball and football and stuff has more roster spots, 8, 9. We're only running 5 or 6 in NASCAR, so I'm going to tweak it a little bit. I'm going to see if you guys have some success. If I give you a core 3 and some names to build around how it works, I'm really curious to see if this works. So going forward, that's what you're going to see from me. But in honor to stay kind of where we've been in the past or consistent here, we're going to do our core 4 DFS picks. Sean, lead us off because you've got them broke down here with DK and FanDuel.
All right, so my core 4 is kind of, in a way, like a core 5. Let's just say I basically have 2 core 4s here for DFS this week. And this is pre-qualifying, so just make a note that anything it mentioned can be subject to change. So keep up with the Discord until race day.
Subscribe and get in Discord.
Thank you there, Rich. Thank you. All right, so core 4 DFS. Here are the drivers that are going to be in both of my core 4s. 3 out of the 4 is the same drivers between them. Kyle Larson, 11,000 on DraftKings, FanDuel 1,400. Ty Gibbs at 7,600 on DraftKings, 7,200 on FanDuel, and Josh Berry at 6,100 and 5,500 on DraftKings and FanDuel, respectively. The difference between my 2 core 4s is in the second driver slot, and that's if you're on DraftKings, I recommend Tyler Reddick at 8,900, whereas on FanDuel, I recommend Ross Chastain at 9,000, just because I think both of these drivers are very good at this track. I think they're both going to be highly competitive, but the main difference between them and why I put one in one core 4 and one in another is simply put the price. Just because Reddick is the cheaper driver between the 2 on DraftKings. It isn't much of a difference, but it still is a difference enough that I have just a little bit more on him in DraftKings compared to Chastain. But the difference between Chastain and Reddick on FanDuel is so insane that you have to go with Chastain there over Reddick, if you ask me. If you want, you could interchange the 2 drivers based on your own personal likability, but I'm going to sort it as that with my DFS core 4.
Excellent. So I fired FanDuel back up. I'm back on FanDuel. It's been about a 5-year hiatus, but I'm back on FanDuel, so you will start to see some FanDuel numbers from me going forward. Still got to incorporate that a little bit. The overview article, I'm going to stick to DraftKings just because if I start getting all the numbers in there, trust me, that's just going to get cumbersome. We're going to scale it down anyway. That's just kind of a quick glance. Sean's going to hone you in come Cup and Xfinity, me on trucks. So I went with the DK and the FanDuel lineup, did a little different. You can definitely mix and match. FanDuel, remember, is only 5. DraftKings is 6. Pricing is far different. You know, crazy to see Kyle Larson $3,000 more on FanDuel, but then you look at the low price drivers and they're $2,000 to $3,000 less. It's kind of crazy. But so for me on DraftKings, give me Logano, give me Truex. Those are kind of my anchors. I do think both of them are going to finish well. I think Logano is going to potentially be a dominator. That's where I'm putting my money. I do have John Hunter Nemechek listed in there. It's hard for me to get past the 6,700 when I do think the guy's going to be a top 15 finisher. That said, qualifying will change that dramatically. He's a cheap enough rate that I can still pivot elsewhere and go a little less, you know, and get 2 value plays that I think are worthwhile and get a little more star heavy. And then Zane Smith. We talked about Zane Smith that will turn blue. Zane Smith, $5,700. You're going to hear his name quite a bit. For FanDuel, again, I'm on Logano. He's $500 cheaper there. Give me Suarez. Suarez at 7,500 on FanDuel is just way out of price. No, I'm not like super excited. I would much rather have Chastain, but when you look at the pricing you have over there, he is ridiculously cheap at $7,500. Again, depending on qualifying, some changes, I might pivot from there. But that was just a name that I thought interesting. Top 10, top 15. I mean, if they don't get a top 15, they're going to be disappointed. I think a top 10, top 5 is probably more what Suarez is searching for. So at that kind of mid-tier price, you're doing well. And then for the value plays, look, give me Hocevar and or Zane Smith, $4,500 and $3,500. That is just stupid cheap. I'm not as excited about Truex on FanDuel. He's 10.5. That makes him on the higher end of the scale. I like him better on DraftKings where he's about the 6th, 7th, 8th price driver down. So the value's there to Sean's point. he does come with plenty of risk. He could be a dominator. He could win. But to be frank, recent history hasn't really dictated that for us, or at least given us any hope or anything to kind of lean on to tell us that's where it'll go. Again, more of a gut on my take, but 10-5, worth it? Probably, but man, Joey Logano at 9,500 is well worth the $1,000 savings.
Mm-hmm. Have to agree with you there as far as Logano goes.
It just seems out of price. Just seems weird. That's something I noticed too, looking at the two, is how different some of them price some of the drivers. Like, okay, Kyle Larson was the highest on both, right? It was the price difference was different. But then, like I said, Truex, I think, was 5th on FanDuel. Meanwhile, on DraftKings, you had to scroll down to get to him, while Joey was like 5th or 3rd on DraftKings, and he was, right next to Truex there on FanDuel. So it's very interesting. And then the value plays. I mean, at $3,500 and $4,500, I would build multiple lineups on FanDuel, kind of pivoting between Hocevar and Zane Smith. Now, again, qualifying will kind of change things, but holy crap, those are some cheap numbers, Sean.
Oh, definitely. FanDuel has such differences compared to DraftKings on pricing that it actually is kind of incredible. I even alluded to that earlier when I was talking about making 2 different core 4s and having Reddick in one and Chastain in the other, just because, like I said, the price difference between them is about a $2,000 difference on FanDuel in particular.
It's significant. I mean, think about $2,000 is more than half of Zane Smith's salary. And to your point, they're kind of in the same tier, Reddick and Chastain. You know what I mean? So here again, this is where I think we got to be careful on DFS and don't be chasing top 5s, right? We talk in top 5s and who we like because of those things. Chase points, which is kind of different than what we talk about in fantasy football, right? In fantasy football, we want to chase volume, let the points happen, right? Here, I think we need to be cognizant if we need to chase the points and the dollars. So if we think 2 drivers are going to be comparable and one's $2,000 less, get the savings so you can spend up elsewhere, whether it be get a better value driver or get another top tier driver or whatever it is, or one qualifies up front, one qualifies in the back, and they're within $500 to $1,000 in pricing. Go after the one that can potentially get you more points. They may finish 3 points further back than the other guy, but moved up 10 places while the other driver kind of broke even. You're 7 points to the better. That's pretty significant on a similar price driver.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, I'm looking forward to this weekend, Sean. We ran long, so I apologize to everybody. We had fun with it. It's only episode 2. We'll get this honed down a little bit. We got kind of excited with the penalties and some of the other stuff. As we get through the year, it'll get a little bit smoother. But hey, thank you, Sean, for all the graphics and all the cool stuff you put out there. This podcast looks good because of Sean, and we got to give a little hat tip for Ray Flowers, right? And the logo and setting this all up. Hat tip, Mr. Ray.
Yep.
So thank you both. But we will see you next week. Same time, same place. For Sean Engel, I'm Rich Maletto. This is RaceGuru Thunder Hour. See you next time.